Hello and welcome back to the Jeff Lucky YouTube channel. This is going to be the Regulation HUU, the VGC Regulation HUU metagame overview. This is not going to be a very visually stimulating video for the first half of it. I'm just going to have a couple replays on, what's it called? BKC style. So, yeah, so for the moment, I'm just going to put the replays on, and I'm just going to yap over it. So, okay, starting off with Regulation HUU, there's just a bunch of the metagame is so decentralized. There's so many good and viable things that it's very hard to actually keep track of what is and isn't good, because there are so many different viable options. Like you see on both of these teams on the pictured replay, there's a fucking electrode. There's two fucking electrodes, a scyther, and a Rotom Wash, which hasn't been good in for a while, right? So realistically, if we're looking at all of these, there's some very odd choices on all parties. There's a Wheezing and a Regigigas, if we're thinking about it, realistically, there's just some weird picks. That being said, there is some kind of metagame here. There is a decently significant, there are some mons that definitely stand out in this metagame. A few that I'm going to note are Como. There are a couple different. The thing about Como is that Como is just a very, very strong setup sweeper, and you don't just necessarily have to run one setup sweeping set. It doesn't have to be specifically. It doesn't have to be specifically Clangorous Soul. It doesn't have to be specifically Iron Defense Body Press or whatever. Realistically, you can run a lot of different setup sets on it. You can also probably run offensive Como, although it hasn't really been done, and also it'll probably be kind of inconsistent since offensive Como does kind of lose to itself. Soundproof means that it basically walls itself. That's why you see Dragon Tail actually on this Iron Defense Como, because with Dragon Tail you're actually able to Dragon Tail out opposing Como, which improves your matchup significantly, because rather than actually you wall it with Soundproof and you're able to Dragon Tail it long term. So you basically do a pretty good job of ensuring that you're able to actually win the mirror. Additionally, and I think actually I'm going to move off of this replay to a different one that features the mod I'm looking for. Primarina. That's me. Primarina is really good. Primarina basically is the best fairy type in the format and the best water type in the format in one. And because of that, it's able to kind of sit on the field and click Hyper Voice for a lot of turns. If you see, this is a Choice Specs Primarina. Mine is just a Mystic Water one with Life Dew, actually, which is a bit of a weird choice, but realistically, Primarina is probably the best mod in the format just because it's so splashable and so easily able to fit on the vast majority of teams. Brambleghast is also a really notable mod because it's so fast, because it's really strong and decently fast for the format. Base 90 is pretty speedy, all things considered. So it's really able to damage trade super well. Same thing with alongside Primarina, and there's also it's able to victimize a lot of these if you look at this team, there's not a lot of mons that are actually able to take on Brambleghast defensively outside of maybe the Smeargle, which doesn't really count, and the Bronzong after boosts. But yeah, it's just it's an odd format because there's it's missing a lot of even more of the balance pieces and the offense pieces that regular Reg H is missing because of the removal of legendaries and paradoxes. There's also no Instant, there's no Rillaboom, there's no Sneasler, there's no Goldingo. Even Electabuzz and Magmar are banned. We do have we do have Electivire and Magmortar, so it's not as necessarily apparent that it's not necessarily as flagrant as well as that. And I don't think it's necessary. It's just an odd format to build because realistically, there's just so many different little things you can do. If you see, there's a Superior on this with Defog Fletchender to boost Contrary, to boost evasion via contrary. There's a Navy Tinkaton. There's a Baxcalibur, and a Gallade. Like I will say I do think like there's so many different viable ways to like run your teams. I think the thing that this format rewards is it rewards good meta calls for one. Like if you have a team that's just able to get matchup on basically every other team that's being brought in a given event, then you will just win. But it also really, I think it greatly rewards good team building. Like what you're able to do is if you have like a good understanding of what the meta is like right now, you will probably be able to build a good team that will genuinely just win a lot of events. For example, I'm going to go back to this replay. I'm going to actually go to the second game in that set. If you look at this team, this is a bit of an odd team for me. This was not a style that I had at all been really seen or explored before this. This kind of like, I would almost say the Smeargle semi-room, where you just have Smeargle able to disrupt a vast majority of the mons on the field. You have this Bronzong plus Rhyperior Trick Room core that's able to kind of act like, the Rhyperior is kind of able to act like a mini Ursaluna. And then this Bronzong with goggles is really able to shut down a lot of opposing Spore, opposing Sleep Powder from things like Jumpluff, from things like Vivillon. Like basically you're able to just kind of win speed like interactions. So you're able to and out damage with like your fast and middling speed mons. Like this Scale Shot Baxcalibur, it has a very good matchup into a lot of different teams, especially if you give it a Decorate. Later variations of this 4-mon core Primarina, or this 3-mon core Primarina Smeargle Baxcalibur oftentimes opt for Ruination on the Smeargle, because basically the thing I realized before this specific replay or event was that no one was actually respecting Spore in their team building. Like this is a thick fat assault vest Hariyama. This team does not have safety goggles. The only Spore immunes are a Terragrass Politoed and a Brambleghast, which the Brambleghast is good here, but the Terragrass Politoed is like whatever, And both of those, because of their like grass typings, are also weak to the Baxcalibur, especially the Brambleghast, which, as a result of its Focus Sash, definitely is not going to be able to take this like Icicle Spear. So it'll be able to OHKO it even through Focus Sash. The thing about Smeargle is just really strong in this format, I think. Like, it's just so stupid. It's able to do a lot of, like, really dumb things. Like it's kind of able to just... It has so much utility for basically no reason. Like, it's able to kind of just sit on the field and and damage trade really well into basically everything. And support into basically everything, especially with Ruination, which means, because with Ruination, you can't even really taunt it, right? So now that you can't taunt it, it's kind of just like, what do you even do, I think the thing with it is generally just like, Smeargle is just it's just an extremely efficient and versatile support piece. And that's really good in a format like this, where there's just not that many, there's not that many consistent mons. Like, I think a lot of mons, like Baxcalibur, like Primarina, can kind of just use their good traits and, like, BST diff. So, a lot of what you see in this format, a lot of the good mons in this format really appreciate Smeargle, because Smeargle is just a really, like, potent support piece that's able to, like, kind of hold these structures together. I'm going to start up looking at the replays for a little bit, and I'm going to actually, like, transition to looking at, a bunch of pastes and teams, because I think that'll give you a better like showing of what the metagame is like. Okay, so getting back into it. For example, this is one of the like earliest teams in the format. This is an adapted version of it, but the point is the same regardless. Como is so good in this format. It's able to just set up for free, especially next, because we have very good redirectors in this format. We have Clefairy, we have Electivire, we have Smeargle, we have Magmortar that are... And we even have Baby Matcha, so Poltergeist, which with Soundproof, or no, with Hospitality plus Eviolite is still like genuinely pretty good. Like there are so many good redirectors that setup is very strong on this format, especially like Como, who has a lot of setup options. Like you can do Dragon Dance, you can do Bulk Up, you can do Belly Drum, you can do etc. etc. Right? You have so many different like viable options as far as setting up your Como, and so many good supporting partners as far as like cores that are able to like be built around the Como, that you really just have a very good time setting it up. The only problem with Como is that you do have to be a little bit concerned about, the obviously the dominant fairies in the format, but also opposing Como. Like the mirror for the Como mirror is really unfortunate because most Como run soundproof exactly for the mirror. The only problem with this is that Overcoat is also a very good ability because there are so many like good clickers of Spore, like Smeargle especially is just so annoying. But there's also like Breloom, which does see some usage, and I think it is a pretty underrated tech option. There's Sleep Powder from stuff like Lilligant's, Jumpluff, what's it called? Vivillon, which are all like pretty viable, I'd say. Like they're all usable for sure. And also, it's just really nice because a lot of the times Spore is just able to put on so much pressure into your Como, especially if you're not running like Electivire or Magmortars or Redirectors, because they, of course, are immune to Spore and stuff like that. Like, I remember I faced I faced a lot of Spore in the kickoff for this formats, and it was a really difficult matchup with Soundproof Como, because you were either forced to Terra Grass the Clefable, or you were forced to, like, take the Spore in your Como, which is a really bad trade because a lot of the times you want to be Terra stealing your Como, and it feels really bad to have to, like, commit Terra to Clef or go to sleep. So, Soundproof is a very good ability on Como, but the thing about Como in general is just that, like, it's so versatile that you realistically, if with the right Terra, you can definitely run. You can absolutely run Overcoat. It's just a problem with like the mirror becomes so much easier with Soundproof because you're immune to clanging scales that it's like very difficult to deal with. This is the Rhyperior Semi-Room team from earlier. I think Smeargle is one of the most important meta innovations that have happened so far. Like, its ability to just disrupt and serve as, like, a really core foundational piece of this balance team. Like this entire team is anchored on the Smeargle. If you didn't have a Smeargle here, if you had something else here, it would not work, like, half as well as it does. Because you're able to decorate the speed-boosting Baxcalibur. You're able to decorate the Primarina, especially under Trick Room. You're able to protect the Bronzong. You're able to Spore for everything, basically. Like, I think I can't emphasize enough how amazing Smeargle is in this format, and how high. I think I'm pretty high on it. I know people are not necessarily as high on it as I am, but something else to note about this format is there's a lot of weird strategies or like niche strategies that would not otherwise be viable that are very viable here. Like if you notice, this is Water Pledge, this is Grass Pledge, this is a Pledge team. This won the Regulation H kickoff and some of the original like events for it. Like I think it's really cool that in this format you get to have like pledges. All four weathers are absolutely usable. The only problem with all four weathers being quote unquote usable is that like realistically, here are the weather setters: Abomasnow, Politoed, Hippowdon, and Ninetales. So you have all of the B tier, like the Shipmon weather setters. The thing is, I think all of these are actually not bad. I think Abomasnow, especially like offensive Abomasnow under Trick Room, can be like really threatening because even with these like low stats, it's like stab combination plus Earth Power is like genuinely pretty threatening. Politoed, I think we've seen a lot of defensive Politoed that are trying to go for Perish Song, but I do think Specs Politoed is the best set. I think that you're definitely able to like take advantage of a lot of its good traits that way. It means that you're not passive, which I think is a big plus for rain teams. Hippowdon, I think, is a bit weird. I think you can do it. Like there's like stuff like Houndstone. There's stuff like Excadrill. There's good sand abusers. but I'm not necessarily sure Hippowdon's worth using entirely. And just get some good traits. It gets, like Slack Off, High Horsepower, Yawn is a good one. It has like a pretty good support move pool. So I think it's not that bad, realistically. Like, it's kind of just able to sit on the field and damage trade pretty well. It has good stats. It's definitely better stats than most of the mons here. So Hippowdon is like pretty decent, I think. Ninetales is probably the worst. Like, it has a good speed tier. I was theorizing earlier, you could probably run like Life Orb. I think the thing about all of these is that these three, you probably want to run offensive on them, because otherwise they're kind of dead weight. Like, I think you need to run offensive sets on these to get the most out of them. Otherwise, like, they're not really going to be doing much. Like, you technically can run like a jacked pack on this, but I don't think it's very good. Like, I don't think there's much of a reason to run a jacked pack overheat on it, because you're like, what's the word? I think your offenses and it's kind of just a dead slot other than Setting Sun. I think you want it to be more active. I think you want it to have like Life Orb or something. But yeah, I think the cool thing about this is like there are 4 weather setters that are all like decently viable. You can try and run like stuff like Perish, or for example, or Como is a very viable setup option. Like Screens Como is very good. Grimmsnarl is also like a very good support piece. Wheezing is also definitely like decently viable. I think there probably aren't as many I think Wheezing Slacking is pretty underexplored realistically. There's not a lot of like options to get rid of it. There's a bunch of bunch of different Como variants. I think Glamora is something I haven't touched on yet, but Glamora is really strong. It has a pretty good speed tier for the format. Meteor Beam just means it hits really hard. It's a great wall breaker. Gothitelle as well being legal also means that you can play a lot of Weather War stuff. Like, this team has Gothitelle because that makes it much easier to play into opposing weather, which I think is very good. Like something like this, Perish Rain bulky offense, which I think is pretty solid. The Sprelim's a nice pick. It's a good Spherical immunity, and it's a good way to just pick things off in the late game. I think there's a lot of things you can do in this format, and a lot of room that has been explored. Like, there's this offense team, for example, that's kind of just I don't know how to say it. It's kind of a bulky offense, if you will, but there's some really good priority options, and from Grimmsnarl. Pult is just really fast next to Farig. You really appreciate a lot of its it's able to just fast U-turn out into something like the Conkeldurr, the Primarina, etc., right? And so you're able to damage trade really positively because of that. There have been a couple bans in Reg Age so far. The first thing we did was we banned Moody because Smeargle in this format is genuinely kind of disgusting. Especially if you have Moody. The thing about Smeargle is that it's just going to be so prevalent and so good. And I think it already is really good. I think if it was Moody, it would just give me 15 more reasons to use it in a given game, which makes it infinitely better because it puts the hacks in your favor. If your Smeargle gets a good boost, you just win on the spot. If your Smeargle gets a bad boost, oh well, you just follow me out of it and move on with your life, I think Smeargle with Moody has so much extra value for putting the hacks in your favor and putting the luck in your favor that it was definitely not very balanced, and it was a good ban. The other thing we banned is Defog, because what you could do is, going back to some of these replays, I don't think that I have a replay of it being used exactly, but the fact that you can just, if for example Superior was swapped in here and it was a side Defog, you can start boosting your Superior with +2 Leaf Storm. You can substitute Fish for misses after you defog on it. I just think it's kind of dumb because you would just do some really stupid and really unbalanced shit with it. You should not be able to boost Superior's evasion. That's really stupid. I think that's just really dumb. But yeah, so this has been a quick overview of the Regulation H metagame. I think there's some really interesting, teams and really interesting ideas to explore. The thing I will say is that I think Spore in general has been pretty under-prepped for so far. We're going to see more games as the Open comes up. So hold up. Well, let me see if there's been any open games from Reg H. Yeah, so this is here we see like Snow versus Scizor Rain, which I think is a really interesting matchup. This Gothitelle is really important here. Like already you can kind of see like there are some really interesting dynamics that go on in this format that you really wouldn't see anywhere else. I forgot to change the same. That's funny. But yeah, like a weather war between Snow and Rain with Gothitelle and a Scizor and a Glamora, I think is really cool. Like I think this is a dynamic that you don't get to see a lot in formats like this, and I think this format is a really interesting one and really fun one to play. And yeah, I've been enjoying Reg UU a lot. I think it's really easy to break in the builder. Like I think if you have a good team and you are able to like construct a good core full of like an underrated mod, for example, Infernape or Mamoswine, I think you can get a lot of value out of that. And I think that kind of thing is super rewarded in this format. But yeah, so that has been basically all of the video. I think that's it. I don't think I really have anything else I want to go over. But yeah, I encourage you to try it out. It's a weird little metagame. I think there's like just a ton of like really silly stuff that goes on in it. And it's been it's been a lot of fun to play, I think. But yeah, so that's the Regulation H metagame overview. Okay, this is going to be a bit similar to the Regulation H video that I basically just finished recording. But hi, welcome back to the Jeffica YouTube channel. This is the Regulation J YouTube video. Okay, so Regulation J, we got that right off of the back of Regulation I. We weren't sure exactly how we were going to handle it as far as format goes, but basically what we ended up doing was we ended up basically making it a side format, but we're supporting it about as much as we do the main format, Regulation H, partially because of like how weird the Reg H metagame is, so a lot of people have been interested in trying Reg J, and because Reg J is really similar to Regulation I, which is a very liked format, or very loved format, I would say, and like by and large, yeah, it was just a very like liked and appreciated format that like a lot of people really enjoyed. Here, let me actually get the regular version of this, not the OTS, but okay. But yeah, so there were 3 things that dropped into the tier that were very important, and 1 thing that rose from the tier. No, there were 4 things that dropped in the tier that were very important, and there was 1 thing that left the tier that was also very important. What's that thing, you might ask? Groudon. Groudon left the tier. If you know anything about Regulation IUU, that guy was on top. That guy was literally the king of the universe in Regulation IUU. It won most of the major events. It was extremely dominant for basically its entire time in the format. The 2 best players in the format basically spammed Groudon plus Zacian the entire time. Of course, other archetypes did win, and there were a lot of archetypes that were very good at matchup fishing Groudon, but Groudon was definitely number 1. Groudon was on top. Groudon was him. Groudon was the king. Just objectively, I don't think there's really any room for arguing on that. So, Groudon left, which means Groudon-based teams are just bunk, right? The entire archetype disappeared from going from I to J. Additionally, we gained Zacian Crown back. Before we only had Zacian Hero. We also gained Terapagos, which is kind of insane. And then, because Regulation J allowed all the mythicals, we basically got every single mythical minus 2. Specifically, RCS Normal, so Extreme Killer, and Darkrai, which, oh no, the Gravity Hip Sleep Hypnosis mod is not in the tier, so sad, oh no. That was a really fortunate rise from us, because, of course, Reg J only has best of 1 ladder usage, so, Darkrai thrives in a best of 1 environment where it can just cheese wins, right? So, because of this, we ended up seeing a very, very odd early metagame where it was a lot of setup spam. Like, if you look at this team, Screamtail is really able to just sit there, it's able to Encore Disable, Terapagos is really able to take advantage of Screamtail, and, like, I basically just took the Reg G team with Pagos, the, like, Screamtail Heatran one, and I just ported it to this and added a Zacian Crown because it just made a lot of sense. There was like no reason not to. We also gained in this format the 2 Ogrepons that we were missing. We now have Ogrepon Quarterstone and Ogrepon Hearthflame in this format, which is, I would say, it's a good add. I think both of those add a lot to the format that are really nice. However, the big problem was Terapagos. Basically, Terapagos was centering the game around either setting up or either like damage trading really well. Like, it's basically just because of its Terra, and because of its like unique interaction with Terra Starstorm, its ability to use multiple different sets. You can use Specs, you can use Meteor Beam, you can use Leftover CM, you can use Cloak CM, you can use all sorts of different like offensive sets that are able to just damage trade super well with basically the entirety of the format. And there's not really any other good mons that are able to damage trade. Zacian Crown is like basically top 1 in the format because it's able to actually take on variants of Calm Mind Terapagos and Calm Mind Arceus forms, because the only Arceus form, mind you, that's banned is normal. So Arceus Water, Arceus Grass, etc., are all legal, which means basically the entire format starts revolving around Calm Mind Wars or damage trading wars with Meteor Beam / Specs / Calm Mind Terapagos, which is why eventually, like pretty quickly into the format, Terapagos just got banned because this guy was kind of just warping the entire tier around it, and it was constricting a lot of restricteds out of viability and just making it so that essentially there was nothing worth running outside of Zacian itself and sometimes Arceus forms. But even Arceus forms were definitely outclassed by Zacian Terapagos. Zacian Terapagos won every single event it was legal for, which was like a good 3 to 4 events, which is kind of insane. And even the events that it didn't win, it was, very, very dominant. It was basically, always in the top 4. Always in, I think it always made finals, at the very least. But yeah, Terapagos, very happy to see it go. It was a much needed shift for the metagame because the metagame was very, very centralized around the Terapagos and around Zacian. So now we move on a little bit. Now the metagame has opened up a lot more. You have this kind of bulky offense structure with, Zacian and Necrozma that becomes a lot more viable now. Like Necrozma Dawnwings is back from the dead. You actually have Deoxys Attack becoming viable because now instead of like, what you're able to do is you're able to prey on stuff like Zacian. You're able to prey on stuff that like, you're able to prey on all these faster mons. Like if you look at, I'm going to take my team for example. Like if you look at my team, there was only one mon on this team that naturally outspeeds Deoxys speed, and it's the Choice Scarf and Didi. This Deoxys attack is so good at just punching holes in things, especially with Terra Psychic. Like, this guy is actually really good at cleaning up endgames, and that in combination with Zacian is just, like, really, really difficult for a lot of teams to deal with. I think Deoxys is really, really underrated in this format. I think Expanding Force in general and Size Spam in general is having a very good time right now. Especially, like, because Necrozma is, like, still very bulky and still can, like, do a lot of tail room stuff, even without Size Spam. And Deoxys, of course, just, like, outspeeds most of the unboosted metagame and is able to, like, just damage trade really effectively with it. This was a Palkia Origin team that did pretty well because, I mean, basically what you're able to do is the Palkia Origin, especially, like, next to Aleki, is able to damage trade very well into the Zacian. You also see the evolution of Zacian sets a little bit, right? Back in the Pagos era, SD was pretty common because you need to actually be able to break past the Pagos. You need to actually be able to break past, these CM Arceus forms. But now you see the stuff like Substitute that's able to kind of take advantage of board states where, for example, Necrozma is able to just click moves. Or in this team, Close Combat, which is able to take, pin a lot of these steel types that Deoxys Attack doesn't like you hitting. Or here, Terra Blast, which is able to help you deal with the Zacian mirror because you have a Palkia Origin on your team. Something else I'd like to mention while I'm at it, because I definitely forgot to mention earlier, Landorus Therian. That guy is insane. Landorus Therian is single-handedly probably one of the best Gloomons in the tier. Because in addition to being able to soft check things like Zacian Crown, things like King Gambit to an extent, things like itself even, it just does a lot of damage, and it's just a very consistent presence and able to, like, intimidate down a lot of things. We also see Ho-Oh stepping up into the meta because of how like big Zacian is. And we also see a different Terra Blast here, Terra Blast Water, because it's actually able to hit Ho-Oh, it's able to hit Talonflame, it's able to hit Landorus Therian super effectively. Like, we've seen such a wide variety of Zacian sets that are able to kind of just adapt depending on what is actually good in the format. We also see a lot of tech restricteds next to Zacian. We've seen the rise of a lot of supportive Arceus. I know this is a Calm Mind Arceus, but there's a lot of like support Arceus here. Let me find it. Let me find a team with it. There's a lot of pretty good support Arceus teams. Like, for example, see the support Arceus Water with Icy Wind, but Arceus' support move is also just really good. It gets things like Tailwind, it gets things like Will-O-Wisp, it gets things like Taunt, so it's basically able to shut down so many different mons, and basically prevent a lot of them from moving. You'll notice the safety goggles on this Necrozma Dustme. I wanted to put special attention on that because this guy's back in the format. Brute Bonnet. If you paid attention at all to the end of Regulation I, you will remember that Brute Bonnet was kind of LeBron in that format, especially because you were able to get the Prosynthesis boost off of like both partner Groudon and opposing Groudon. And even with the rise of like Zacian C, which is, I would say, probably even more dominant than Zacian Hero was back in Regulation I, Brute Bonnet is still really good because it's able to just, like, Spore is just so good in this format. I think that, I'm going to say in general, I think a lot of VGC UU builders just do not respect Spore enough. And I think that can cause a lot of problems for them in the builder. I think, things like this Terra Grass on Ho-Oh, this Ogerpon form, like, I think the double grass here does like a very long way in making sure that you're actually able to take on, what's it called, Brute Bonnet. Same here again, like we have double redirection, both are Spore immune. I think a lot of the times, the most effective teams in this tier will have a lot of very good ways of dealing with Spore, and I think a lot of the times, though, the common trend is that Spore is just over and over again underprepared for. Like, especially this one, like Taunt, Wellspring, to like both block opposing Trick Room, to block, prevent Brute Bonnet from just sleeping stuff. I already pulled this team. There's surely more teams than this. But, oh yeah. And stuff like, even like Arceus Ice, which is like pretty viable because again, you've a big stat stick. You have Stab Blizzards with Icicle Plate. The thing I think about this format is that there's just a lot of interesting things you can do as far as like the restricteds. Like, it's really just, it feels a lot more like a one restricted format than Regulation I did. With Regulation I, it felt a lot more like you were trying to build around a specific restricted pairing in a way that emphasized the strengths of both, whereas in this case, I think the restricteds have kind of, I don't know, I think the restricteds are kind of normalized because realistically, Zacian is so good that I think it kind of mugs a lot of the other restricteds. I think a lot of the other restricteds feel kind of, not necessarily weak in comparison to Zacian. I mean, they're literally weak in comparison to Zacian in a lot of cases, right? But like, I think in a lot of cases, Zacian is just so fast and so strong that I think it balances the tier out in a way because it kind of keeps it honest. It means that you can't just commit to running like really hard setup Arceus and stuff like that because Zacian just does a really good job of punishing that with, whether it be like Terra Blast to like cover in a Zacian resistant typing, or whether it be SD to out offense a setup on. Like, I think Zacian is just the great equalizer in this format. Having a lot of good ways to play around Zacian, especially Terra Blast stations, I think is really important. And overall, like, I think a lot of this format is dictated by like 3 mons. Brute Bonnet? No, 4 mons. Brute Bonnet, Landorus, Ogerpon, and Zacian. Brute Bonnet and Ogerpon Hearthflame, and to an extent Cornerstone, and to an extent Wellspring, are able to like soft check and like prevent other mons from just straight up dying to Zacian, especially your own Zacian, right? Because the Zacian mirror is of course very important, especially running Terra Blast Ground. And Brute Bonnet is just so good at sporing things and so good at just sticking around on the field, especially with Landorus and Hearthflame support, that it's really able to just spam sleep moves. But yeah, I think this format definitely has a lot of room to grow. I think there are a lot of like underexplored mons. Like I think this Magmar here is a very smart choice. I think even going back to Regulation I think that guy should probably see some more use there. But yeah, I think this format is probably it's definitely a little bit more of a centralized place than Reg H is. However, I think it's I think it's a little bit more balanced because the archetypes are a little bit more clearly defined, and team building I think is a lot easier in this format because rather than having to find like a core that's just strong on its own and can beat a lot of other things, you don't have to find a core that can just beat whatever random bullshit you're going to be running into because there's just like so many different viable things. There's a lot less viable mons in this format than there are in Reg H, because like I think Reg H is too decentralized, whereas this is like I think a healthy level of centralized. But yeah, so that's my just some of my thoughts on Regulation J. I just recorded the Regulation H video, so I probably will be releasing these together. I actually might not release these I might publicize these super far because these are not my best work. They're kind of just overviews, I think. But yeah, so this has been the Jeffica YouTube channel. Like and subscribe if you're cool and stuff.